Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Green Team of the Legendarium, where we cover the books the main hosts aren't covering right now. I'm your host, Cesky, and today I have with me Hurin Fan,
Hola.
and I also have with me The Solution.
Hello.
And today we are going to be talking about a new release for Josiah Bancroft, The Hexologists. It's the start of a new series. We got an arc for it. We're very lucky. We're very excited to get it. But let's talk about our first impressions here. I'll go first. I love this book. I have a hard time saying it's quite the same level as the finished series of the Books of Babel, but it's definitely up there, and I definitely want to keep reading more of it. Solution, I know you're the kind of the dissenting voice here, so let's hear your opinions on it.
I think it's a good book. It is not a good book for me, but it is not a great book. It was worth reading. I definitely recommend it to quite a lot of people. Yeah.
Okay. And Kieran, how you feeling?
I adored this book. I love the characters. I love the world. I love the magic. I love the beautiful, beautiful words. This was what I needed at this time. And it's already shot up to like my top 2 favorite urban fantasy series. Probably my
Wow.
favorite detective story, definitely.
That's big praise. So what do you
praise.
have in competition there?
Really just craft sequence.
Okay.
No, maybe top 3 because if we're counting the watch from Discworld.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. It never hurts when a book hits you at the right time. Now, let's try and keep this non-spoilery for a few minutes and just talk about some things about it. How did Huron Fan, you mentioned his prose and his word choice and his writing. Like, what about that really struck out to you this time for this book compared to other books or other authors, perhaps?
Bancroft is very clever, and he knows it, and you can tell just from the way he writes. He can introduce a character with fairly dense is probably the wrong word, very quickly, efficiently, and you could understand that person very well within a paragraph. And at the same time, it's like, oh, I've never seen that before. It's an interesting way of describing someone, but I totally get it. Not just that, but the dialogue that he has between people is believable, and it works for their characters, and there's so much characterization inside the dialogue, inside the descriptions, and because most of this is from one person's POV, we get to understand that person's perspective as well. Also, I had to use the dictionary. I love using the dictionary while I'm reading.
I had to pull mine out a couple times, but I never felt bad about it. So, Solution?
Yeah, so he's definitely very creative. I love that he does that. This was not the book for me at the right time. I don't like the prose when it's that, like you said, it's not dense, but he's just so all over the place with some of the stuff that, like, yeah, like you said, I had to use the dictionary a few times, and some of it was good. Some of it I just didn't want to do at the time, and that speaks to mostly my personal life of being very busy and stressed out. So when I was reading for fun, it wasn't really to get to a dictionary riddled book, but no, it was still really good. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I have to just agree more with Huron on this one. I felt like everything was super efficient and that each character had like their own real voice, and you could just tell like the way they talk and the way they act, you could feel the characters are more fleshed out than just what we're seeing sometimes, and that they have their own like drives and everything, which is what you'd aspire for in every writing. But just it worked really well for me. Just the way he wrote and just the humor in this one. I don't know if you guys thought it was funny or not, but I
Laughed
was
out loud several
laughing
times.
all over the place in this book, just all over the place. Now,
I like clever humor, and this was quite clever.
it was. There's
Also, there
even
are some
spots
really
that
bad
were.
puns.
That's right. And at the
Yeah.
beginning, he calls
The
out the
puns too.
puns, and
Yeah.
yeah. So I talked about this yesterday with you here when we were recording something else. But from this book, I specifically got kind of a Sherlock Holmes / Warehouse 13 vibe. Did you guys feel that at all? I know you didn't hear because you don't know what
Yeah,
Warehouse
Sherlock
13 is,
Holmes.
but
Yeah, definitely Sherlock Holmes. I don't know Warehouse 13, but yeah.
good sci-fi show. Just basically collecting artifacts of power and storing them
Okay.
away safely.
This is a detective story through and through.
Yeah.
And like in the vein of some of Sherlock Holmes, or even what's the guy's name? Edgar Allan Poe, Poirot. What they do is they go from place to place, they find a clue, they go to the next area, they meet an interesting NPC, but character. They meet an interesting character that moves them somewhere else. We slightly unravel this mystery, and there are twists and turns along the way, and it it's exactly that. Which
Mhm.
if that's not what you want, yeah, definitely don't read this. But if you're in the mood for a fantasy detective story, yeah, check this out.
Yeah, a lot of actual detecting versus not detecting. Yeah, right.
It's definitely about
Or
the
sometimes.
methods
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see.
and the interesting characters.
Yeah. Now, as for some more non-spoilery things, is there anything else you guys want to bring up non-spoilery?
The setting.
Setting. Okay. Tell us about it.
The setting is not usually something that I would be interested in. So this is set in the year. This is secondary world, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
believe so. Yeah.
But they specifically give us a date of the year 4032 or something like that.
Yeah, I like that he did that. In my opinion, was to throw everybody off. Like this
Yeah,
is to make
I
you.
highlighted.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so all right, but it seems clearly based in London, I think,
hmm
and in the early 21st century, I suppose, right?
Yeah, it would be well, like the
Eh,
technology level was cars were
mm,
just kind of getting invented, where they just made streets for the cars, and
they
then
call
same
them
with
Yeah.
jaunts.
telephones and stuff like
There's
that going.
lots and lots and lots of pollution.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes, yeah,
so maybe late 20th century.
yeah, but definitely based in London because even the wasn't the
Definitely near the
river
beginning of the
had a
Industrial
pun
Revolution.
name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I really liked the setting, and to give it a feel, it was like half steampunk, but not necessarily steampunk. I mean, I got the
Mm,
steampunk kind of vibe from it, but
agreed.
without actually be using like steam to power things or
Right,
etc.
Magic. Almost if you play League of Legends, it's a popular game, and I don't like the game, but the world is cool. It's called Hextech, where it's magic as part of the steampunk property.
Mm.
So
Hmm.
it's very similar to that.
Like the cartoon.
Yeah,
What was
Yeah.
it
the
called?
cartoon Arcane. Everybody go watch Arcane. It's a
Arcana.
good show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Arcane's great. Yeah, Arcane's a really good comparison, I think.
Comparison.
Mhm.
And usually I'm not really like I shouldn't say I dislike these things, but a big problem that I have with urban fantasy is usually because it's so similar to our world. But it didn't bother me at all in this one, even though it absolutely is a secondary world. Because I think the environment really worked well into what the themes that Josiah Bancroft was trying to explore, which first and foremost I think was like there are two things. First, inequality in power, especially in terms of haves and have-nots, and then secondly, environmental
Oh,
Like
impact.
climate
pollution
change.
or
Yeah,
damage or yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
pollution, climate change.
Yeah.
Well, I
So
think maybe we'll talk
industrial
about
England
those.
works perfect for those topics that we're
Yeah.
going for.
hmm
I think maybe we'll talk about that hopefully more in the spoiler section here. Now, solution. I was going to ask you, what was one thing you'd want to say in a non-spoilery way?
And the non-spoilery way,
Yep.
I do like one specific character that has the quality that's interesting and funny that we'll get to later. And just the magic in general is interesting in this world, and he obviously put some thought into it for what he wants to be a series. And I thought that was really good and unique. And he teases you a little bit, and then he gives you some more. And obviously, you're trying to get hooked for the later books. And yeah,
Perfect. Well, I think that's good on the non-spoilery section. You know, 2 out of 3 of us liked it or really liked it. 1 out of 3 of us liked it, but maybe the wrong time or just the wrong
Loved
book.
it.
So, oh, excuse me.
yeah, I knew you
Kieran
guys would love
loved
it. I
it.
was like, I don't want to put a damper on anything, so I didn't mention anything.
Um, one more thing. This
Sure.
story is largely also about family, and I think it does that very well. I
It's
imagine
a
there'll be
lot about
more
family.
in future books,
Mhm.
but like good and bad, it's largely about family.
All right. Well, let's just get into the spoilery section here. Did we want to do a plot recap a little bit?
Yeah,
Off the
good.
cuff. Okay,
Yeah.
Who wants to try it?
I'll
Also, I could
try.
start. We
I'll
want to
try.
bounce around like we do it for some of them.
No.
So we've already settled on
You
the
good?
setting. We already know what's going on. So one day, some guy who works for the king comes to is and always will be, and her husband Warren will be, who didn't change his name when they got married, which is cool. Um, and he's like, "Hey, the king is trying to bake himself into a cake, and that's not normal." And suddenly they're attacked by a gigantic, like troll-like creature.
It's like
Mandrake.
yeah,
Like a
like
tree
almost like an
Mandrake,
ant.
entity.
thank you.
Yeah. hmm
And she's like, "You know what? I'll look into it because somebody doesn't want us to find out." And that's the kind of lady that is. And so they do some investigating. They visit graves. They visit wizards who are outlawed. They visit some rich a-hole, and they are deterred
Chelmondolo.
by a sorcerer. A sorcerer in this world is somebody who can work more than one type of magic, two of which are currently outlawed, and they're trying to stop them. At one point, they solved what they thought was the mystery, but one of their witnesses dies under dubious circumstances, and it causes Is to go back into and re-examine their evidence and talk to more people, and they find out it's a big conspiracy, and that the king actually is infected with spores from a hell dimension, and his sister is actually the brains behind the whole thing, and she's also evil sorceress. And
Well,
what else am I missing?
she's the brains behind the throne, but not behind kind of the story of our book, though.
Yes, good point.
Yeah.
The brains behind the story in the book was actually a rich a-hole who adopted 10 children as a social experiment, finds out one of them might be the son of the king, and he uses that to his advantage, and he uses everybody and everything.
Yes, yes. All right. I think that was good. So they solved the clue and then head off on their next case right at the end. So I'm hoping that the series could be just random short stories from their career. If it goes an actual series, that's fine with me. But we'll definitely see. That was
I
a
think
good
it'll,
recap, Huron. That was good.
based on what happens in here and what they seem to be setting up, I think Bancroft definitely has an arc in mind, and this is not going to go into an episodic format, even though that's kind of what I want.
Oh,
But I'm here for it. I loved it.
Are you sure? Because I mean, I thought the was it her friend, the old high school friend or whatever. That's what the next story was going to be. Is like we're going to call a favor in soon, which would be the next story. Which I thought that was the big clue for that. So I figured it'd be an episode.
I think
go to him.
it's setting up basically a serialized story where he's I think Josiah Bancroft is working up to a large ending that he's had since the beginning.
Like 1, 2,
Gotcha.
3, more like the Towers of Babel versus
Okay.
something else.
Yeah, instead of like comparing it to like Sherlock Holmes, where basically everyone is its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. All right. Well, let's talk about some characters for just a minute. Favorite character, least favorite character, character relationships. What are you guys thinking? I think I disliked Chalmondale, of course, the very rich man who is very smart and does some good things, but the social experiment with the children, and then his kid as is dying, the Henry Blessed, who thought he was the king's son, and then he learns he's not the king's son, then they learn he really is the king's son, and he's just like, oh, if I can be the king's son, I can forge this, and then he'll have to love me. And it's just like, oh, that was like just so painful right there. Like he's so wants his his father, for a better term.
He's not a particularly compelling villain. I think he's realistic, very realistic. But yeah, I think he's one of the less interesting characters in the story.
So who's your favorite then, Huron?
Warren.
Yeah.
What about Warren is your favorite then?
So I love Iz. Iz is fantastic. Mm-hmm. We're mostly from Iz's point of view, and we understand her pretty well. She's very motivated in the case. But I love Warren because he serves as such a good juxtaposition to her, and he's so human, and he cares so much about other people, and he's so sociable, which are all things that I'm lacking. So I enjoy that reading in other characters. But the reason I love him the most is when they decide to visit the orphanage, and he just immediately stands up and starts making sweets.
Starts doing calculations, yeah.
She's like, what are you doing? And he's like, you can't expect me to go to an orphanage without a bunch of like candies
stuff
for the kids.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, if I hurry now, I can make it before we leave, and I pull an all-nighter. And he's so supportive. He's such a great character.
Yeah, and he's a gentle giant, and I love gentle giants. I mean, I know it's kind of trite, but I love him.
Yeah.
Oh, it's fine. I liked that one scene where they go to the sweatshop with Warren, and he does something that just ticks Warren off, because he gets mad at the girl who comes in late or something, and Warren just starts beating the crap out of this guy. And the guy's like, help, like, and it's just like, I told you to stop and like let us go and like be chill, and you didn't. And then Warren, she taps Warren. She's like, okay, Warren, it's okay. Like he's learned his lesson. And Warren's like, takes a second, he breathes. He's like, okay, I'm back, I'm me again. And the shopkeeper who's been beaten up is like, you're okay. What about me? Like I just got beaten up. And is like, just stop talking over there. Like don't aggretize, don't make it any worse for yourself. Just I liked that scene of him when he what he told the guy and stuff. That was a kind of just an altar to him, you know.
Mm-hmm. Got layers.
That's right.
It's
All
like
right,
an onion.
Solution. What about you?
Well, it's Warren. It's definitely Warren. If I'm not allowed to pick him, I'd say Fellovox is a very fun,
Televox
interesting
is very cool.
character, and I
I
like
was
the introduction is my favorite scene, which we'll get into. But yeah, I'll just leave Fellovox as my second favorite.
I'm glad he wasn't forgotten about in the rest of the story. I was afraid like
Yes,
he was just gonna be like a little thing. Oh, we have a dragon in our purse, and
right. No,
leave it
he's
at
a
that.
part of the team technically, and he
Yeah, and he's
cares about
part of
them.
like
Yeah.
Yeah,
the end.
yeah.
And
Mhm.
Yeah,
they
he's
refer to him all the time,
they're
Yeah.
always talking to him, and like every time he makes a dish, he's throwing it in the jar. It's just like
and he's
everybody's
useful.
always like, "What are you doing throwing all that food in your bag?" And he's like, "Oh, it's where our dragon is," you know.
Yeah. I'm like, all right.
I'm gonna have to choose the mix of both of you guys. I just loved Warren and Iz's relationship. They're so honest with each other. They're so trustful. They know each other super well. You know, almost without thinking, they're both like, and they both are like supportive of each other's habits. When Iz goes down to her lab and she's like, "I'm just gonna go work on this for a couple hours to a couple days," and he's like, "Okay, that's chill. Like, you do your thing. Like, I'll bring you food." You know, and when he needs support, she's there for him.
I
The
just
only, yeah,
so I love reading about a husband-wife relationship, or it doesn't even need to be husband-wife, but two people who are just very, very in love with each other, and it's a very healthy relationship.
Yeah. Less about
Mhm.
all the drama that we normally get. That's not
Mhm.
fun. Yeah, it's nice to see the wholesome side sometimes.
Yeah. And then just the one thing that I noticed this time, and it's just how often I just loved his nonchalance about all their sex and everything else like that. He's like, if you stay over at their house, you know, the guests would try to shame them in the morning, and they'd be like, "What are you talking about? Like, it's all cool, it's all chill." Or like, they're in the carriage ride to the king's house at the end, and they're like, "Hey, you know, we got time for a little
We got
quickie here. You
time.
want to like go?" And
Yeah.
he's like, "I'll be quick," and she's like, "Well, hope not too quick." It's just so funny and like. I don't know. I mean, it makes it sound like it's a worse thing than it is because it wasn't bad at all or like nothing bad, but it was more frequent than I expected in this book, you know, versus his other books, which have like zero mention of anything like that. So,
I I I I honestly loved every time they talked about sex, especially when it's usually not my thing, but when Warren was so upset about having to throw away the rug and
yeah,
Oh
his
yeah.
explanation for wanting to, and he's like, "Well, the first night that I came over and your mother was upstairs and we couldn't exactly do it in the bedroom," and
Oh, yeah.
it's so
the
funny.
description, I'm not gonna read it because it's a little spicy, but it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. I think we talked about characters a lot. I think they were all really good characters, but what's your favorite scene? Solution. Let's start with you.
I like the Fellovox introduction scene. You get the tension, you get, you're worried because Warren's got his thing outside. Is in the bag, which is just a cool concept in general. And then you get this dragon that's like, "Oh yeah, the thing that jumps around," and he's describing it like a cat would, something that like you want to pounce on something. And it was just really funny the way Josiah wrote his descriptions for Fellovox, describing all of this stuff, that he has like the never ending goat, that he was like, "Why would you call it never ending?" Just because, it's never ending. I eat this goat all the time and it just keeps coming back. And it's just his silly names. It's a great scene. It's my favorite.
I
I
love
love that
later.
scene. Oh, sorry, you go here.
You're probably about to say that. It's go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I love the scene when she's in the thing the first time, and he's like, "I just have to keep eating this infinite goat," and she's like, "What's that?" And he's like, "Well,
Infinite
surely
goat.
you know what a goat is." And he's like, "Well, yeah, of course I know what a goat is, but what's
Yeah.
infinite about it? Oh, it grows back if you don't eat the horns." Like, what? Like, of course there is, right? Like,
I like when he eats the guy's arm, and later he's like, I had to go eat the infinite goat again because to get the man taste out of
Taste
my
out of it.
mouth. I
yeah,
Yeah.
felt bad for him. I hadn't done it in so long.
Yeah, he was getting used to
what's-
it.
he's never
To being
eaten a
alive.
person before anyway, right? That we know of.
Nope, not until this book, I guess.
Yeah, and then he's just like,
Yeah.
"Oh my god!" That was such a funny scene. You're right, Heron. Okay, Heron, what's your favorite scene?
Um, hmm, this is hard. I think I'll go with her swimming through the void when
Through
they're
the
at
shadow.
Chalmondali. Yeah, the shadow,
Yeah.
and she jumps out the window, and then she uses I forgot it's some magic thing that allows her to swim in the shadows of the world,
Yeah, a
and it's
ring.
just very evocative. It's really cool, and I don't know, it's got a tongue.
And she sees the tongue of the gloaming god, or the gloaming god who's mostly tongue.
Mm.
This is my scene. My favorite scene, or one of my favorite scenes, is actually similar to that. It's they're being chased by the sorcerer or somebody, and the sorcerer has called up the being from the hell dimension, and it's just devouring everything. And so, Warren pulls out the sword of the Cloven God, and he throws it at it, and it works for a minute, and then the sword just gets eaten by it, and he's like, "Oh crap!" And then he's like, "Okay, well, we said we were never ever using this device again because of the tongue of the Cloven God," and so he throws that at it, and the devourer just falls into the shadow basically, but then all of its tendrils come back up through the shadow, and he's like, maybe this was the worst decision. And then
that's a terrible idea. He's just gonna be swimming in the void.
So then this is the sentence though. It was hilarious to me. Warren wore the anguished expression of a man who had inadvertently set his own house on fire while trying to kill a spider, touching off a conflagration that could leap to the homes of his neighbors, consuming first the block, then the city, and then to the nation. And I was just like, that's so funny because that's totally what happened. He's like, oh, I'll stop it this way. Just like I'll kill that spider with a flamethrower, and then oh wait, it's much, much worse now.
Yeah.
Oh, I think we should say we're reading from ARC, so if it's different from what our
wording may change.
That's true.
Yeah. Since
things
we quoted
can
a few
change,
things.
but
usually we're only going to be quoting good things, so they're probably not going to change.
Right, the best parts, in our opinion. Yeah.
All right. Now we're gonna do a little bit sadder part of this. Solution. What was your least favorite, or what didn't work for you in this one?
Mostly the plot. I didn't care almost at all about it. I like the characters, the main characters like Iz and Warren, and even her family members, and I'd like the dad. I just didn't care about what was going on in the plot at all.
Okay. Well, that's your choice. That's fine. I mean, you're allowed
Yeah.
to. So
Yeah, it's just the detective part wasn't interesting to me. I don't know how you guys felt about that. I think you guys obviously liked it. I don't really read a lot of detective novels, or at least I never sought them out. So that could just be me. Just I'm not used to that, but I just didn't like that.
yeah, Hiram, what do you think?
I'd say about half the chapters start with a words are escaping me, non sequitur or seemingly unrelated story that is somehow weaves into what's happening at the moment. Often it's brilliant and it's funny and it makes sense and it's clever. Once or twice I was just like, I think that's a bit of a stretch. That's it.
That's fair.
I have a hard time thinking of what I disliked about a book, as I do with most books. But I guess one thing is I kind of wish the mystery had been. It's very weird. You get to about like 50 to 60%, and they're kind of solving the first mystery, and then there's 10% where they think they've solved it, and then kind of, but you think they haven't, and Isolde is still kind of piecing it together and thinking about it, and then the last 5 to 10%, it's like, oh, here's the actual answer, with a random piece of evidence that was kind of foreshadowed could be happening, and it really leaves it up to like you could know or you couldn't know, and it was good, but just that part didn't really click as much for me. If I had to say something, like I wish either maybe they'd figured it out a little bit earlier, or maybe more clues for the reader to figure it out. Because like I think if I read it again, or if I went in with a really critical eye, I could figure some things out, but not everything. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
No, it does. I think it's a tough type of story to write, regardless. It's one of the reasons I hate those series on like TV, like CSI, because if it's 20 minutes in the episode and you got 20 minutes left, they're like, we caught the killer, we put him in jail. I'm like, no, you didn't. You got 20 minutes left.
Mhm.
And it's one of those things that it's tough to write a book and have that planned for your readers.
I think it was done well here because, and I agree with everything you said, but here, if the reader's even paying it littlest bit of attention, they'll be like, well, so where did this come from? Like why were they attacked by the big monster at the beginning? Who was the lady in white? Why did this happen? Like things don't really add up. And so it makes sense for Iz to also be like, wait, this doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah. It's the level of like engagement for the reader to be like, all right, here's your puzzle clues. Are they just for this series? Or sorry, this story? Is it for like maybe something that's obscure going to be for the rest of the series? Something like that. It's tough to do. So I'll give him props for doing it at all.
Lots of Chekhov's guns in this book, and he did it really well.
Yeah.
I agree.
When did you figure out that the Constance was the sorcerer?
Pretty much when it was revealed that she was the sorcerer.
As soon
I remember doing it
as-
before, but like I don't remember exactly when.
I don't remember what percentage it was, but when they were fighting in the orphanage schoolyard with the chains and stuff and the big monster, that's when I'm like, this has to be Constance. But then later on, when they go meet Constance and
That's
like
when it was. It was when they met her. I was like, all right, she's got to be. That's what it was for me.
that's what made me change my mind actually, because
Oh
like
no, I
she's
was
got
like, it's got to be
like,
her.
like
Yeah.
a sorcerer, she's got to be able to fix her brother, and she's obviously concerned, and she has all these hexes everywhere.
Hmm.
But then yeah, we got later. I want to say that I love the mother. What was her name? The being
Luella.
at the end.
Oh, the mother of grotesques.
Yeah, the mother of grotesques. I love this idea in a detective story where you could sacrifice part of your afterlife for
Yeah.
truth.
For
Like
answers
that's
now.
so
Yeah.
interesting, and it works as such a great temptation for Iz,
Yeah.
which is like exactly what Iz wants, but it's such a big sacrifice. She's like, well, maybe Warren will just die before me, and everything will be fine.
Mm. And then what if, in the future books, obviously Warren's like, well, Iz has already got a year or two in there. Why don't I go get some answers? Because we're gonna have to do it anyways, kind of
Yeah,
thing. So we'll see. It's cool. And I like the
nice
Yeah.
the
Chekhov's
whatever they
gun
got.
to end the book.
Yeah.
Now, how did you feel like that was a Chekhov's gun? Just curious, like, because we've never hear mention of the mother of grotesques, which are just gargoyles or other stone type figures.
It's a
Um,
Chekhov's gun for a future book.
oh, I see. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it
Because I
wasn't
was
set
like,
up in this book before anyhow at all.
yeah, I was like, because that kind of just came out of nowhere as like a, hey, you want your answer? Like, here's the here's
Yeah, the
the
Deus
absolute
Ex
truth of it,
Machina is like,
right?
let's get you
Doesn't
moving along a
affect
little bit.
anything really because they've mostly figured it out by then, and so have you. But like, that's yeah. All right. Oh, did you guys have anything? I was a little surprised that there were a couple throwaway characters. Not really throwaway, but like Old Geb. There was one other one they went to for a clue, and then it was like, okay, visited him, got the clue. You move to the next character.
Yeah, I think like around 35% is when the percentage wise of the book is when things started to flow more naturally for me. I felt like it was a little too scene jumpy before then, but we were also still getting introductions to everything.
Okay.
I thought it was a common part of the genre, and I just accepted it. I mean, you're
And
right.
that's
It is really jumpy, and we meet lots of different characters, but as long as they're interesting, I don't mind.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it probably is part of the genre. I just don't tend to go in with those kind of thoughts most of the time. So, I really like the first line. Did you guys like the first line of the story?
Can you
I
read it
don't
for
remember
us?
it. What was it?
The very first line of the story, let me pull it up here, is
Probably won't change, just in case
um,
anybody's wondering.
yeah. It's a good one, so I don't think it'll change. Sorry. I have to go through all the other things. Oh, and the chapter titles. I really liked the chapter titles.
Chapter
I
titles are
thought they were
great.
just so fun and kind of silly, but not silly. So, let's see, here it is. The king wishes to be cooked alive. It's just like the royal
Yeah,
secretary
that's a good
said.
one,
And so
yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
like, it kind of sets up this plot and our premise and just kind of like what's going on. So, oh, and this is my other question I wanted to talk to you guys. Which of the four magic systems did you guys kind of like the most? I mean, there's necromancy,
Mhm.
wizardry, hexagy, and alchemy. Now, we don't see any necromancy, but we can kind of guess what that one's
We see
about,
a
right?
little.
We see after effects of necromancy. We don't really see it in practice, though.
I mean,
Well, we see the sepulcher shovel.
no, I mean we see at the end, the Princess Constance. She literally resurrects. I forgot his name. Atwood.
Chalmondale?
No, at the end of the story, when we find out what actually happens to Henry Blessing's, what he thought was his father, she resurrects him and sends him overseas.
Oh, right.
Oh,
Yeah. Because that's why
you're
you're like,
right.
everybody was like, oh, they sent someone old
They
to go
sent
replace him.
Rudolph
No,
over.
they actually sent him. He was just dead. So
Yeah.
his body was aged like, it looked
Yes,
like
you're
corpse.
right. I guess in the course of it, we see the least of necromancy then.
But it was not us getting that scene. It was a person describing what had happened. So,
I thought she
All
literally
right.
saw it from the gargoyle's eyes.
Well, she literally sees it, but
Ah, I see. She's describing something. Okay.
yeah,
yeah.
then she's just kind of redescribing it back to us, kind of a thing. But
Yeah.
wizardry, command of mostly dead languages, you can do a lot with that. We see
Mhm.
some things of it, but not others. Hexagy, you draw a symbol, it takes effect, it does a certain thing. Kind of the weakest / most requirement. It has to be very precise of them. And then
Yeah.
alchemy, movement, and dance. So how'd you guys feel about the magic system in here?
I thought it was a lot of fun, interesting. I don't really have much else to say. I thought it was cool.
Yeah, I thought it was hit or miss. It didn't really work. Like, I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It was fine. It served the purpose of the story. You get has some powers that she uses, and not just her wits. Yeah, it was okay.
I liked that it was that they each had a very creative focus to them for the most part. Like Hexagy is all about kind of your artistic ability, your artistic creativity to be able to draw those lines correctly, and Necromancy is about your singing, or that's what it says in the book. It mentions it, and then Alchemy is about movement and dance, and that's when I think of alchemy, I don't generally think of movement and dance or things like that, but.
Yeah, you
I
heard
thought
it
it
here.
worked well,
Chesky's
and
not
it
a
was
dancer.
that's well, that's true facts. Jesky is not a dancer. That's right, but
Yeah.
I thought it worked well and just kind of provided a little bit of a unique spin to each of the four kind of magic systems. So
Yeah, I think planning ahead for his other novels that he, made the four magic systems, you really only get a little bit in this one. And then I'm sure we'll get more primary focus on the other ones later.
yeah,
Hmm.
right. Well, I'm kind of out of stuff that we to have to discuss, unless you guys have something you wanted to bring up.
I do.
Sure.
I just have a few lines that I wish our listeners to listen to, so that in case well, they've already read the book at this point, so maybe
We
I
want to
should just
drive
say
things
screw
home
it.
to him. Be like, this was good. You got to remember it.
All right. Trolley rails, power lines, and overflowing gutters stitch the capital city together with all the forethought of a field surgeon. That is good writing. Above those modest rooftops, the city's towers swelled along the ridge, their golden shoulders pressed together in huddled opulence.
Mm-hmm.
At the focal point of this kaleidoscope of desires, the book spines rose the archivist's desk, a round battlement defended by a woman who wore a black shift, a monocle on a gold chain, and her white hair in a sharply angled bob. There are some examples of why this book is written so well.
And, Kieran, you brought up some themes earlier. I meant to come back to them. What did you want to talk or say anything more about the themes of family, the themes of the power inequality, or pollution, climate change kind of thing?
I actually think all three of those were good examples of explorations of those themes. Because the first one was talking about how the city was stitched together with power lines and whatnot. Throughout the story, you are shown the city and the effects that industrialization has had on the environment specifically. You see how it affects everyone's life with the carp fish, and you see how it's also improved their life because they wouldn't have these wonderful new technologies and ways of jaunting through the city, for example. And you wouldn't see all the pollution and how it affects the people who are on the lowest level of society. Let's see, what was the second one? The second one was the people in power. It was referring to the buildings of the people who have the wealth in the city shuttled together in their opulence. Same thing. It's a big divide between the haves and the have-nots, and this also feeds into their other themes of environmentalism and climate change, because these people who are living on the very top of the city aren't really feeling the effects that the climate change has had on them nearly as much as the people on the lower part. And the last one was actually just a description of Isolde's mother, and her relationship with her mother and her relationship with her father were constantly brought up, and I think pretty sure those are going to come up later on in the future stories as well. But the difference you have between a healthy environment and an unhealthy environment, and Cholmondeley's experiment adopting in quotes 10 children to see how they would find out in their environment. So those are all great things that are explored in this book. There's probably more, but those are the three that stood out to me.
Going through, I felt the same. Specifically the economic and less so the family, for me, more of the higher class versus the lower class.
I think if I had to kind of rank them in not in importance, but in which ones I felt or took away from the book, it would be first like the haves versus the have-nots, the royals versus the poors. Why they're doing what they do and how, and then the family dynamic, and then the third, the pollution one. I mean, it was there, but it felt less emphasized to me versus the other two.
That's the thing. We didn't even bring it up, but when they went to the hospital and they were attacked by the anti-royalists, that was a great scene. And she has to go.
Yeah.
She has to go inside the bag.
And he's like, I made friends with him. He's like, oh, okay.
That's just like in my mind. It's like that's such a Warren thing to do, where he's just like, oh yeah, like hey,
you got
I see
kidnapped,
you
but we're
this.
friends
And,
now.
like let me just talk. Yeah, he just like talks him to death.
Are you related to so and so? Oh, I know your uncle.
Yeah. It's like, all right, well, I don't
Yeah,
want to
we
kill
hate
you.
the king too.
Yeah, we're only working for him because he's paying our bill, and like we're gonna tell the truth no matter what happens, right? It's just, it was
Yeah.
so, that was good. Solution, did you have anything you wanted to talk about?
No, I think we hit it all. Did pretty good.
All right. A little bit shorter of an episode today, guys, but that's okay. Unless you guys have something else, Huron fan.
Nope. Read the book.
No?
I love it.
Read the book, you love it. Okay. Well, this is going to conclude our episode of The Hexologists by Josiah Bancroft. If you want to chat with us about this book or anything we may have missed, or you want to discuss more with us, you can find us on the Legendarium's Discord. I'd like to thank the Legendarium for loaning us a corner of their media empire. Thanks to Jingle Punks for their song, Galactic Damages. That's the intro and outro. You can follow us on Twitter at Green Team Pod. And thank you, Solution, for being here.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you, Huron fan.
You're welcome.
I'm Cesky, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.
See you guys.
Bye.